Jim Essian, the Paradox Church. Welcome to this episode of HiggTalks. How's it going?
I'm good, man. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. I think I've been excited about talking to you today because this is a different perspective. I think oftentimes we think of churches as kind of, they're kind of over there. But there's something very entrepreneurial about a church in general, that it's building a business. It's a different type of business. It's a nonprofit. But a lot of the skill set that you have in building the Paradox Church is the same one that a lot of our other business owners are, same skill sets that they're using as well. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, background, baseball player turned general contractor turned pastor.
Yeah. Grew up in Detroit in a baseball family. My dad was still is 6 decades in professional baseball, and he retired from the major leagues when I was 4, and then got right into managing and coaching, and did that, and still does. So I grew up around that, traveling a lot with my dad, with our family, and then at 18 signed with Michigan State to play football, but also got drafted, so ended up going to play with the Royals.
Were you going to play baseball too at Michigan State? Okay,
you're going to do both. But it was football that pays the bills. So
shout out Nick Saban, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. I had to walk into Nick Saban's office and because I actually went for the first couple of weeks of football practice and decided to sign with the Royals. So I walked into Nick Saban's office to tell him I was leaving. It was the most intimidating moment of my life. He's only like 5'4", but he's a very scary man. So played 8 years in the minor leagues, and retired at the young age of 26.
Nice.
Had got married and wasn't going to make it, and it was just time to shut it down.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start there then. First of all, cool background. Also, shout out to your dad and his epic mustache. Yeah. If anyone wants to see a great mustache, Google Jim Essian, James Essian, either way. So let's start there then. All right. So you decide you're finished playing baseball. You've got a wife. Where are you living at that time?
Well, the plan was we were up in Detroit. So my last year was with the Tigers. I grew up there, and I was going to get into my uncles and cousins had a Raymond James office, and I was going to jump right in and start doing that. I'm from a huge family. So my wife is from this area. She's from Crowley, Texas, but not a huge family here at all. And back home, my dad's one of 13. My mom's one of 5. I've got 55 first cousins. We all grew up right around each other.
Yeah.
And so it just seemed practical and natural just to live at home and be a successful, securities and finance and all of that, and just do what my family was doing.
Right.
So that was where we were, and that was the plan. And then just felt led to move down to Fort Worth, not really knowing exactly why or what.
Yeah.
So we moved down here in 2007.
Yeah.
And pretty soon after that, felt just a call to start a church in downtown Fort Worth.
So this is a little bit of an ethereal question, but what does that feel like? Like, I feel called to do this.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of our business owners probably feel that in some regards.
Yeah.
Certainly it's a little bit different and maybe a little bit more, I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But maybe not. So I think, there's the calling sense of, I'm gifted in this way. I'm passionate about this thing. I want to do this. I see a need, and so it's what I want to do.
Right.
Yeah, and I think there is a lot of freedom in that. And we should do what we want to do.
Right.
But then I do think there's also there can be just and I would hate to bifurcate, like one is supernatural and one isn't, one is spiritual and one isn't, but mine felt it's the one where you're going in one direction and you feel completely called to another direction that makes no sense at all. That was what mine was. My direction was family, be successful, make a lot of money, and go in this direction. And so that call, at least that particular call, was pretty like, nope, we're going to go this way to a place that doesn't make sense with no real direction yet in regards to what that looks like.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for unpacking that. And so then, all right, so now you're in Texas. Where do you even start? It
was terrible. I'm really funny north of the Mason-Dixon line. And so y'all were really weird down here. You're still pretty weird. Most of you.
Yeah.
You're welcome. It was a culture shock when I got here. And I had traveled around a lot, but I mean, if you've been involved in sports before that, sports, military, there's certain things that are like such a strong subculture that you don't really experience the greater culture around you. I don't know if insurance is like that, but
it's not.
I don't think it is. Yeah. But I just, as much as I traveled, I was always a part of this kind of subculture of athletics.
Yeah.
And so then you get thrown into just a new place. It was just very strange. People were strange.
Right.
But we loved Fort Worth, fell in love with Fort Worth right away. And just felt, again, that confirmation of that call to be here. So my wife had started a photography business. She's now an artist. She's an entrepreneur.
I might should have had your wife on this podcast.
She
actually.
would, she'd be, yes.
Yeah.
And then I started a baseball camp, football camp with one of your previous guests,
nice.
Nick. When I first got down here, we just threw together something and started doing some stuff together. And I was just doing random stuff, man. I was a 26-year-old, no college degree, who all he was good at was baseball.
Yeah.
And just slowly began to build those things that we were building. Eventually went to work with my wife. We did the business together for a while, and had a few other photographers with us, and we're doing destination weddings, and had a studio on Magnolia before Magnolia was even Magnolia. We were part of that kind of being developed and growing into what it is now. But pretty soon after we came down here, I found out, I didn't know you could do this. I found out you could start your own church. And as soon as I found out that you could start your own church, I immediately knew that's what I was supposed to do.
Okay. So I'm supposed to start my own church. Is that just like I stand outside and like just see if people listen to me? Or, I mean, because there's obviously a very, again, entrepreneurial business aspect of that. And so just like starting any other business, to your point, no college degree, no one in your family had started a church, right?
No.
So, I mean, how do you even start? Are there?
Yeah, I had no idea. So it's funny, there's a tool that some businesses use called the cultural index. And I took that one time and basically I'm unhireable. Like nobody would ever hire me because nobody would ever want me to work for them. I forget what it's called, but it's just I'm something, and I'm that to such a high degree that it would be impossible for me to work for anybody. And so I think it was just I knew that that's what I was supposed to do, and so I went and figured out how to do it. And what was a blessing was just we're a part of a church planting network. So we not only did we start a church, but we're a part of starting other churches. And at the time, obviously they helped develop me and teach me and kind of learned from them how to do something like that. But at the time, and it's changed a little bit, all those guys were just high entrepreneurs. You go start it, you figure it out. And so we just kind of figured it out. Ask a bunch of questions and read a bunch of books and listen to a bunch of podcasts and then start telling people you're going to do something and why you're going to do it, and hopefully they come.
What about like the money side of things? Like, I mean, obviously Heather, your wife, was working at the time, and so I'm assuming she's kind of supporting to a degree, and you're kind of doing both, or what?
Yeah, so we were doing it together at the time. The business. She got pregnant just as we were beginning to really ramp up. Hey, we're going to start this church. So we were going to birth a church and a baby at the same time, and she wanted to stay home with the kids. And so we slowly started weaning ourselves off of the photography business about a year or so out from actually starting the church. So yeah, we went from six-figure company to hardly making anything at all those first couple of years.
What was that like?
That was fun.
How did the wife handle that? How did you handle that?
Yeah, I don't remember. It was just you're kind of just your one track mind when you're starting something, when you're building something, and when you're all we were concerned about was, is this thing going to work? This thing that we're called to start and to begin, is this going to work? And we were about to have our first kid, but we didn't have a lot of responsibilities. And there was, when you're young, you take risks and do dumb things, and if you fail, you fail.
So did that network you're referring to, did they give you money to start?
Yeah.
Did you just have to go ask people?
Yeah, you got to go ask people. Yeah. So I had a goal to raise $250,000 and had a business plan or church proposal.
Do you have to present that to someone, or
present it to other churches, other organizations, individuals, whoever, basically we're like a NASCAR driver, just as many sponsorships as possible.
The stickers everywhere.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. We don't care. At that point, you don't care. And of course this is 12 years ago, so you didn't have as much like cancel culture, tribalism, but you didn't care who they were, associated with, or you got money, we'll take it, So my goal is to raise $250,000. I think I raised 50. So I was terrible at fundraising, but what I was good at was getting people, and, obviously, people that want to be a part of something like that, they're going to support that and give to the church. So
what do you think? And maybe this is a hard question to answer, but what do you think about your past? Again, like nothing, if I looked at your resume, nothing would tell me like,
there's nothing on the resume.
This is the church guy or this guy would be the guy to build a business. Like, what do you think in your past equipped you to like just have that stick to itness? Or like, was it just sport? Was it like your parents were just entrepreneurial? I mean, what do you think it was?
Yeah. I mean, I think, the best indicator of what somebody's going to do is what they've already done. So I do think there was things in my past that I had been able to be successful with that, you look back on it, it's like, that does make sense. Now the pastoring part didn't make as much sense. My family and people that knew me growing up, they were all very, very, very surprised. And baseball professional baseball is not exactly conducive to, a moral life.
Right.
But, I was always wired that way. I think there's a way, there's a way in which I'm wired where I'm not very good at working for other people. So I was always starting things and doing things, and had run a indoor sports arena. I had
where
in Detroit.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. And had just started little things and done little things, and was always just going after that kind of stuff at a small level, nothing
right.
huge, but
right.
Always knew that I was going to be somebody that was, like you. You in a sense run your own business. You run your own book, and you run your own team, and you don't exactly work for somebody, but same idea. It was wired into me, and I had some success doing some of those things, and I wasn't going to just go work for somebody that wasn't going to work for me.
Yeah. Okay. So then, all right. So we've got people coming. You said you're pretty good at getting people to come.
Yeah.
People start showing up.
Yeah.
Where are you meeting?
We're meeting in our living room.
Nice.
Yeah. So we just had people all like sitting down, all backs against the walls.
Like, blankets, or what are we?
Nope.
Just like
no,
sit wherever you can.
No kumbaya. Yeah. No, we started gathering people. We had, as we were here, when we had moved to Fort Worth, we were part of a church, and we were leading in different places in the church, and we had in a sense built a network of people that we had ministered to, and had built a community. And so when we talked about, hey, we're going to start a church, and it would probably make sense to talk a little bit about why. We looked at the landscape of Fort Worth, and we saw the all of the growth in Fort Worth. This is 12 years ago. And Fort Worth now is, fastest growing big city in America. What is it? 12th largest city in America.
Bigger than Boston, which is crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we had, this is 12 years ago. And so we're beginning to see that. We're living just west of downtown. And we see the economic growth, the cultural growth, population growth of Fort Worth, but didn't see much spiritual growth. Meaning the vitality of the churches around us, the vitality specifically of the churches in downtown Fort Worth, as so many people were moving here and the city was growing, we didn't see a lot of spiritual growth that was happening in the city, and so felt just a very, very strong need. Like, I have to plant a church in downtown Fort Worth. There hadn't been a church started in downtown Fort Worth in over 100 years that hadn't either died or stayed. All the churches down here now, there's 7 or 8 of them, have been around over 100 years. Just saw a huge need for that. And so that was the vision that we were casting, was just there's a need here, and there's an opportunity here. And we didn't want to just start one church, but we wanted to start many churches in the city. And so we started just telling that story to people, and they started showing up in our living room.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long before there was 40, 50, 60 people in the living room, to where then we broke off into 3 different living rooms. And once we started to break off into 3 different groups, that's when you need to gather then, as a church, everybody together. So we started having these monthly services just to give people a taste of what that would look like. And
are you going to all 3 of those houses and
no
preaching, or
no I raised up 3 other leaders. Okay. And would meet with them, and then people would meet at those groups, and we still do that today. We got 50 or 60 of them scattered around the city, so then we started meeting on Sundays once a month, and you'd get some people come and show up and just take a look at what we were doing. And we met all over the city, man. We've met at 11 different places in the city.
Wow.
In the last 11 years.
What was the first spot?
Stage West Theater off of Vickery.
Nice.
Yeah, it was terrible. yeah, and Botanic Gardens and Ridgely Theater, and ended up at the Van Cliburn Hall, which is where we spent the most of our time the last 10 years.
Had you spoken a lot previous to
Yeah, I was really good at speaking, Carter.
No,
I did. I had spoken at FCA, things. I had, I was a part of Business Professionals of America in high school, and did a lot of public speaking through that. And I would just, anywhere that I had an opportunity to speak, I would take it. And again, that's just a gift. And you can't really boast in something that was given to you.
Right.
That was I kind of joke, I've only really been good at baseball and preaching. I'm not really good at anything else about the job. Okay. I was good at that naturally.
Cool. All right, so then you start growing. You start meeting at like a more formal location.
Right.
So now you're building up a business that has a following. You have, I'm assuming at this time, tithing, people are giving to the church, and so maybe you're starting to get a little bit more finances. And how do you start kind of building out a staff and a team?
Yeah.
And because at a certain point, like every entrepreneur, you're wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah.
But at what point and how did you start saying, okay, now I need to start developing a team, and where do I find these people?
Yeah.
And,
One of the best things that I've learned is just having a running ideal staffing plan. By running, I just mean I'm constantly looking at that and making changes to it, and dreaming about personnel. Who do we need right now?
Like in an org chart type way, or?
Well, both. It's on a Google Doc. Just the ideal staffing plan is on a Google Doc, and then we have what we call an accountability chart, not just an org chart, but what are you responsible for? But just the ideal staffing plan is like, what is my context right now, and what is God doing, and what are we doing well, and what are we not doing well, and so who do we need? And constantly looking at who do we need, and who our next hire is. I learned that pretty early on. I forget from whom, but it was really helpful. Like, you should always be thinking about who your next hire is. And so I'm literally always constantly thinking who our next hire is. What's the next, what's the role? Not so much the person, though I can talk about that, because I do think there's a time where you just hire purely for talent,
right,
without even a necessary role, but for the most part, it's what's the role? What's going to move us, what's going to move the ball down the field for us as a organization, as a church? Well, this role, or this more specialized role, the few times, the rare times where it's like, that's a rare talent. I just want to get that person, him or her, and we'll figure out something.
Right.
Right. And so I've always had just a running ideal staffing plan. You got some numbers on there, like, what's our budget? What's our personnel budget? What kind of room do we have in that budget? Do we want to go over that for a particular reason at a particular time? But just having a running staffing plan made me constantly think about it. So we, early on, we start the church, and, we're talking about, we go from 120 on that first service to, we have 350 in the fall, 6-7 months later. Yeah. So from the time that I'm the solo staff person to 7 months later, I've got 3 times the church that I had when I started. You're thinking right away, like, who's my first staff person? Right. Who do I need to hire? How do I need to do this thing? And, you're talking about contract labor, you're talking about part-time, full-time, things like that, and not really knowing where the money's going to come from. In my business, and probably a lot in yours as well, you might, getting people to come to your church is almost like prospecting. Like, they come, but they don't start giving for a while. You might not see any of that.
Yeah, the sales cycle,
yes,
if you want to call it that, is
exactly
longer.
And obviously what we're doing isn't, just to get them to give to us, but you to build that organization, it needs to be supported. And so you're trying to see, as we're growing, I know that the money will trail behind a little bit. What is that going to look like, and what do we need, and who's our next hire? Yeah.
Honestly, there is some real similarities there to our business. Even if you get a client, there's always a lag between when you actually start getting commission, and then, you're having to service that client before that commission comes in. And so you're really kind of running at a loss for a little bit of time until that money starts to come in. And so there's kind of a, sometimes internally we're having to play the game with the powers that be here, or with our account management teams, to say, like, hey, this is justified expense. Yes. You just have to wait.
Yeah. And so we would use the language of plus or minus. Like, is this staff person going to be a plus guy or a minus guy? And so minus would just, or gal. And minus doesn't mean bad. It just means that this could be a support staff that is super necessary, but you're not going to see a direct correlation between that hire and them bringing in more people or more money, right? Whereas a plus guy is going, you're going to hire him, and maybe you don't have the X amount of money in your personnel budget for him, but you want to take a chance because he's going to bring in 100 new people that is going to provide. He's going to pay for himself in a sense.
In terms of, like, he's out here prospecting, or he's just who he is brings something to us, or maybe it's both.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's say you're in a college town and you want to hire a college minister.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The college minister is not going to make you any money,
right?
Because college kids don't have any money. So that's a minus position, but you're saying that's worth it because we want to minister to this community or this campus, and unless we can, unless a few of their parents are going to donate, in the end, it's a minus position for me.
Yeah.
But if I go out and hire this, like Maya at our church, like, I go out and hire Maya to help connect people into our church, and to do it excellently, she's going to kill that, and it's going to be, and more people are going to come to our church because of her and get connected and begin to give. So she's a plus gal. That's a plus position in that sense.
Gotcha.
And so, if we're in a position where it's like, and I don't know if I can hire somebody right now because I'm looking at my budget, I'm not sure, but I want to take a risk. I'm going to ask that question: Is this a plus role or a minus role?
So you're more likely to take a risk on a plus role. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's really helpful for probably a lot of our kind of nonprofit entrepreneurs too, who are probably running in the red quite a bit as they're building their business and considering, when do I bring a team member on, and is that worth the risk?
Right. And, you know, a nonprofit isn't obviously making profit. And so there's literally, I mean, somebody could hand them $1 million check and they'd be able to spend that year. You know, there would be needs, there would be places for that money to go, and that money is going to be gone. You know, there's always a need. And so, you're always running in the red in that sense. Because the money you're receiving is meant for your mission. Right. It's not meant for your profit.
It's meant to go back out.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Okay. So, you know, you've touched some there on the building, and I want to go back to something, and then we'll come back to my kind of where I am in my thought process. But you talked a little bit about hiring different roles and how you find people. And so Higginbotham, we talk often about what we call as the Thanksgiving Day test, meaning it's really just our language of culture. That we don't want to hire anybody that you wouldn't be comfortable eating Thanksgiving dinner with your family.
Yeah, that's good.
If that person doesn't fit at your table, then why do they fit here? And so, you know, sometimes we're going to hire outside of that on occasion if it's a talent, to your point, that it's like, well, we just need this role right now, and this is the best person for the job. So how do you go about, I would think, especially in a church type context, culture is probably a big part of that. How do you vet culture? How do you find people? Is it word of mouth? Is it friend of a friend? Is it we post jobs? Is it all the above? I mean,
there's a couple of things I think we've learned. I mean, one, if you're hiring inside the church, meaning you're hiring somebody inside a network, or you know, a friend of the friend, or you're gonna know some things about them. You're gonna know their culture fit, you know, more so than you would have if you're hiring from outside.
Right.
You're going to know their character probably. You're going to have a good idea of just, this is a good character guy. This is a good dude. This is a good gal. I think they'd fit in well because they're inside. What you probably don't know is competency, you know? You don't know if, you know, one of your key guys' friends is going to be good at this. Just because he's friends with that guy doesn't mean he's going to be, you know, good too.
Right.
And then when you hire from the outside, you typically know competency because you've done the referrals and they've worked in the same industry, or they've got some past performance you can look at, and so you know they can do the job. But because they're outside of the organization and maybe not relationally connected, you don't know culture fit and you don't know character. And so you just need to kind of know that going in to that. If you're a high culture organization, most of your hiring should probably be, you know, relationally and from kind of a closer network, a closer circle of people. Whereas if, man, you're just trying to hire, you know, hardcore talent and you feel like you can, you're a good judge of character, or it's a strong enough culture that it will, you know, you can maybe interview for that and just kind of, you know, check to see if they'd be a fit, and you feel like they could absorb that culture easy, you know, then maybe you go outside and you just find the stud guy or gal that's already done it. And of course, every role and every situation is different, but you just know that if I'm hiring from within, I know character and culture and compatibility, but I don't know competence probably. But if I hire from outside, I know they can do the job. The other thing about culture, though, that we've learned is that you can have a strong culture. You can also have a strong accidental culture. You can like, for us, it's like, you know, we want to dream big, and we want to honor one another, and we've got some cultural values that are really close to our heart. But we also have accidental cultural values that you don't realize. That's when you're sitting around the boardroom and you're like, man, everybody here acts and looks and dresses the same. You know, everybody here, you know, I don't know, they just talk the same.
Right.
And that could be sometimes bad.
Right.
You know, you can lack the kind of diversity of
you
thought.
Can fall into some of that group think.
Exactly. And you fall into an echo chamber where you didn't even realize it. And so, you know, culture can be strong in the good things, and it can also be strong in the bad things.
Dude, there's like 10 things you hit on right there that I want to like talk about. So I'm gonna land on a couple. The first one is, so a story that I'll never forget, I think about it all the time from when I was coaching, is I coached with a guy named Pat Washington. He's now a receivers coach at Appalachian State, but he was at Tennessee for a long time when Phil Fulmer was there and they were winning national championships. And I asked him, so what happened? Because, they did this meteoric climb, won a national championship, and then they started to fall off.
Yeah.
And he said, man, what happens is you develop this culture and you do things a certain way, and it gets you there, and you're having success, and you're sticking to who you are. And he's like, and then in our world, we would bring in the blue chip recruit, and we brought in one.
Yep.
And he was a horrible culture fit, but the culture was so strong that he fell in line.
Yeah.
And you took a chance on this guy that was nothing like your kind of guy.
Yeah.
But because the culture was so strong, it worked.
Yeah.
And he fell in. So then you take a chance on another couple of them.
Yeah.
And then 3 or 4. And then he said, and then you looked up.
Yeah.
We had a whole team of problem kids.
Yeah.
And he was like, at that point, it was too late to fix it.
Yeah.
Because we had changed who we were in the locker room, and we weren't player-led anymore. And we couldn't fix it fast enough.
Yeah.
And I've always thought about that in terms of my own team building, of, making sure that we're mindful of who is our kind of person here, and do they still fit that? And so I think it's super important that companies stay mindful of it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, and I think Higginbotham is, I wouldn't say we're going through like growing pains in this regards, but we're trying to learn, how do we be mindful of diversity of thought, diversity of culture, diversity of, ethnicity, and all of those things, and still protect culture?
Yeah.
That we're not just hiring people to check boxes, but that we're hiring the right people and still looking at diverse talent pools, meaning socioeconomic statuses, that we're recruiting at Ole Miss and we're recruiting at Prairie View A&M. And we're, so I think there is something to that, though, that can be learned in terms of how do we keep our culture without becoming groupthink and still being mindful of diversity.
Yeah, and so the challenge is with a growing organization, the challenge is that what the leaders or the managers or the CEO or whoever's the people in charge, the people with authority, the people that are leading the teams or the departments, when you're in a growing organization, you can't wait to delegate things. You can't wait to get things off your plate, right? Mm-hmm. That's why you're hiring. That's why you're going out and you're finding the best people, and you're trying to you're doing that because the organization is growing, the work has been piling, the responsibilities are overwhelming, and you're handing things off. But what you can't delegate, you can delegate tasks and you can delegate the tactical things, right? The execution of the vision and all of that. What you can't delegate is culture.
Right.
You have to be the culture. By you, I mean the leader has to be the cultural, culture carrier and the culture driver of the team or the organization.
Yep.
And that's mistakes that I've made in the past. Was man, I can't wait to find this key position, this key role, so I can kind of step out of this responsibility, so I can start doing some of the other things I want to work on. And I stepped too far out to where I wasn't guarding the culture, and I wasn't training the culture, and I wasn't defending the culture, and I wasn't cultivating the culture.
Yeah.
And then you get culture drift, and you start falling into those accidental cultural values.
Right.
Because hopefully your culture, whatever that is, and of course it's a sexy word now, but whatever that is for you and whatever that means for you, hopefully that's so valuable and so important. It's also unique to you that you're never going to drift towards those things. You have to fight towards those things.
Right.
And so what I've done and what I've seen done is that we have a tendency, especially in a growing organization, plateaued ones maybe don't, but a growing organization, the tendency is to delegate culture, and that's where you get drift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, there's a guy named Patrick Fulcher that used to work at Higginbotham and got recruited away. He's really talented HR guy. He's been at Chick-fil-A. He's been at Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah.
And I've asked him, hey, how do they protect culture at those places? And it's what you just said, that it's all based on the leader.
Yeah.
He's like, if you're at Chick-fil-A and your store has bad culture, they'll replace the leader.
Yeah.
They'll try to get the leader in line.
Yeah.
But if the leader is not on board, then they're not going to get to have a Chick-fil-A anymore, because it all comes top down.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that they harp on the most.
Yep.
Because the tactical practicals can happen.
Yeah.
But culture has to be constantly considered and given. And even Jamie Ice, who was on our podcast last, talked a lot about how much they just talk about it every day.
Yeah.
Like, do you talk about your cultural values like every day, or how do you?
Yeah, we don't talk about them every day, but we talk about them a lot. So once a month we have a vision strategy meeting, which is our primary all staff meeting, and we walk through them and we talk about them in regards to different initiatives or projects or events, or
Meaning, like, how does this event or project fit into our cultural values, or how do our cultural values define how we're doing this?
Yeah, both. Yeah, both.
Okay.
But again, nobody else is going to think about that more than the leader.
Yeah.
Nobody else is going to think about that. Nobody else is going to guard that. Nobody else is going to protect that more than the leader. And that I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. Like, the leader drives that culture, because you can have, I mean, I've operated in, dozens of different systems, and we've had, we're always reworking different processes, and we're always tinkering, and what would be best now and what would be best here and what's not working over there. In the end, what's going to make something work, everybody's heard the axiom that I'll completely butcher, but like the best, having a plan is better than not having the perfect plan, right?
Yeah. Or in the words of Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yes. Yeah. And it, kind of the same thing. You can tinker with your systems and your processes, and here's how I want to do my calls, and here's how I want to, keep track of customers in this way, or whatever. In the end, those things should be tinkered with, but it's the leader that's going to determine the success of any of those things.
Yeah. Man, that's a lot of good stuff there. The next thing that I just am curious about, because there's something about a church that I would assume you almost have to separate in your mind, or do you, that I'm running a business, and to your point that you just made, the people that attend our church are the customer. And so there is a business aspect in terms of how am I caring for the customer, how am I getting new customers, and so there's something in your mind that probably looks at things in a very practical, matter-of-fact way. And at the same time, you have to shepherd these people, and there's something more, spiritual about that. How do you balance those two in a role like a church leader?
Yeah. Man, I don't think that I do that. I don't think that we look. So I know you meant by, seeing the person coming to the church as a customer. But even then, even if we could use that analogy in a way that doesn't feel, a little dirty to me.
Right.
But even if, because I know what you mean, but I still don't think of it like that, because, and I wonder, and you tell me, if this works, in every industry or business, but I wonder if that's the best way to think about it anyways. I wonder if it's not, this is my vision for who we're going to be, and this is the product that I want to develop, and this is the service that that just being so committed to what you are actually offering, or the need you're trying to fill, or even just the customer, what they maybe not even, and this is maybe where it just doesn't translate, maybe not what they want, but what they need, providing that. Man, I think at least for us as a church, because we have a survey going right now at our church, right? So it'll end here in a couple of weeks. We did this a few years ago, and so we've got a survey out to our people, and it's providing information right now. And so I've looked at it a couple of times, and that's helpful to do. I'm looking at these things, and it's not going to be, they say this, they say that, so now we're going to change something because of that. Now we might, if it fits with what we were trying to do, and it wasn't working, and so we want to go after it. But I want to be so committed to just what we're doing, that if the customer doesn't like it and they opt out, then so be it, because I'm committed to what we're doing.
Right.
And, for Higginbotham, there's other insurance companies. I'm sure there's been times where you're like, you should probably just go to that insurance company, because that's just not something we do here.
Yeah.
And we do the same thing as a church.
Yeah. And I think something that we consider as a team is that there's a certain level of conviction that you get when you develop more confidence in terms of who we are, what our vision is, what we do well, that gives you the ability to speak plainly to people, or in a loving manner.
Yes.
To say, hey, I don't think we're the best fit for you here. You should go do that.
Yep.
Or hey, this is absolutely not what's best for you. If you're going to do it,
Yeah.
then you can do it.
Sure.
But I'm just telling you, this is going to go bad.
Yeah. Because otherwise you vision drift, you know, otherwise you end up, you know, like one of the fast food restaurants that's, you know, selling fish, but you're a burger place.
Right.
You know, and that's, you know, going back to Chick-fil-A, like that's one of the things that they've done so well is they've I think it's like 12 different they've only added 12 things to the menu in the last, you know, since they started kind of thing.
Right.
And I think you get vision drift, mission drift very easily when you start acquiescing or capitulating to every customer, you know, every squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
And I mean, just like for us, we're never going to have, rock climbing to Jesus in our kids' space, you know, and we're not going to have, you know, we're just not going to have that. And that's okay. If you want that, that's just not going to be us. So maybe you need to go to another church, and that's totally okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's totally fine that they have, places where you can climb to see Jesus. But you know what I mean? Like we're just not going to do something like that, or we're not going to do this, or we're not going to do that. And I think that's okay.
Right. No, I think that's a really valid point. You know, just understanding who you are.
Yeah.
And being okay with that.
Yeah.
I actually I had another producer this morning that sent me an email asking about something I had posted on LinkedIn. He said, how'd you come up with that? And I said, I didn't really have to come up with it. It was just what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and I said, you don't have to do it either. You can just be okay with who you are and be confident in that. And
now that's easy to say when you're Higginbotham or when you're a church of 11 years and you're established. That's hard to do when you're just getting started. Yeah. You know, it's hard to turn away business. It's hard to say no. It's hard to, that's a hard thing.
Yep. Yeah. And that's another great point. I mean, that's something that we have to talk to our mentees a lot, you know, as a mentor of newer producers, is that it is really hard to walk away from that deal that you need the money.
Yeah.
But if you can do it, then you're going to help set yourself up for more success by having a book of business that you're really proud of and that you can really service well. And
and if you have, man, that's a great point for mentors. I mean, if you have a mentor that says, here's how that's going to go down. You'll get the check next month, but they're going to be the biggest pain in your butt. Yeah. And it's going to actually keep you from, you know, servicing these other people or calling these other people. And in the end, it's going to cost you money and headaches.
Yep.
And they can listen to you or not, but that's good to have people that can speak into that and say, here's how that's going to go down.
Yep.
And it's better for you to just stay streamlined and laser focused on this one thing.
Yeah. Have you had good mentors?
No, terrible mentors. No, I have. I mean, the best mentors for me have all already died, like they were dead guys. And just reading biographies of pastors, and certainly other, you know, the business leaders and leadership books. And I read all that stuff too. And most of them are alive and they're great. But best mentors have been just dead, like they're dead because they're old, they're old and died, but they had ministered in a similar context that I'm in. So they, you know, it's Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones in London in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. You know, it's a post-Christian context, an ever-increasing post-Christian context, an urban context, postmodern context, you know, individualistic and autonomous, and beginning to question institutions and authority and all the things that we're facing now in our day, and just seeing what he did. And to tell you what, like that's one of the things I learned from him. And he just kind of stuck to his guns, even though it was unpopular.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to do. And he had a huge church because of it.
Yeah.
He had a successful ministry because of it.
Yeah.
Whereas the churches or the denominations that capitulated to culture, capitulated to the customer, are either no longer exist now,
right,
or are so dead and dying that they're irrelevant completely.
Yeah.
So he was a great mentor in that.
That's awesome. So where's Paradox today?
You've
met in 11 buildings.
Yeah. So we navigated the COVID disruption like everybody else did. We got tired of the word pivot like everybody else did. And we tore our ACL on all the pivots that everybody else took. And man, it's just been amazing, actually. A lot of things were really hard about that, but then where we are now is pretty cool. We planted our 4th church during the pandemic. So we've started 4 churches.
So you're like just sending out people from your church to?
Yeah. So we've sent out, hundreds of people and half a dozen pastors to start 4 new churches 5-10 minutes away from us.
So how do you define success then? Is it like we have the biggest church, that's how we're successful, or like what?
Yeah, our mission is to saturate Fort Worth with the glory and grace of Jesus. And so to saturate Fort Worth, the whole city, inherent within that language of saturate is decentralization, not centralization, not getting bigger, but getting smaller, not, spreading out, not consolidating.
Yeah.
So our whole mission is to actually send out. Nice. And so we planted a church in North Fort Worth, West Fort Worth, East Fort Worth, and West Fort Worth. So you've got white bread, suburbanites in North Fort Worth, like they're as, white and suburban as it gets. Yeah. And then we've got, Kanan and Eric and the dudes on the east side, and more of an urban context. And then we've got Brad more in like a pretty, diverse, and in South Fort Worth. And then you've got West Fort Worth, and we're all over the city. And we've planted churches in Brazil, and we're starting to do some work in the Middle East as well now. But and then we're building a church in downtown Fort Worth. So we kind of got kicked out of our rented place downtown during COVID, and we're meeting just west of downtown now in a theater. But we're building a 30,000 square foot church building right in the heart of downtown, right, not far from where we're at right now. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, what have you learned in the process of building a building then? That's probably
that this is the worst time in the history of the world to construct a structure.
Oh, that's true. No doubt about
that. Supply chain, inflation, shipping, all that COVID kind of did. This is just a terrible thing.
How have you learned that stuff? Is that just leaning on people, or?
Yeah. I don't, I have no idea what I'm doing. We were so far in the process of I had already had an architect and a builder that we'd had a relationship with, because we had been, we've put in offers for 16 different places around the city in the last 5 years.
Goodness.
And just never had the money, the capital to be able to. We were always $1 million short, $1.5 million short. There was always, a developer grabbing it up. And then COVID kind of gave us a little bit of a COVID discount with where we were able to grab some land. So we were far enough down the road that it didn't make sense to go hire kind of like an owner's rep or something like that. And so I kind of took that on, and we've got a lot of help in counsel and just a good team that we're working with. But yeah, it's a terrible time to build. And yet, that's just what we're in the middle of. And so it's the same thing as anything. It's just asking 100 questions. And I openly just say, hey, I'm sure this is a stupid question, but what about this? Or, yeah.
Dude, I think that's an actual skill. People that are willing to just say, I don't know what that is.
Yes.
Like, explain that to me.
Yes.
Our VP of finance here, I tell him that all the time. He's one of the smartest people I know. And he says that all the time. Yeah. He'll always be like, I don't know what you mean by that. Say that again. Or
posturing is like the most ineffective leadership thing to do. And I try to go as over the top as possible. So it's not like I don't know what you're saying. It's I'm a complete idiot when it comes to this. I'm so ignorant. This is probably going to annoy you, but what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's disarming, and I really need them to dumb it down as much as possible.
Right.
Because I'm probably going to understand it if you explain A, B, and C. I can probably eventually get to D, E, and F. Right. But if you start at G, I still don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So I want them to get to the basics, ABCs, so that I can kind of fully understand what's happening.
Yeah, and man, so much of I think good business and even like sales, honestly, is being willing to get to that point to where you kind of have that rapport with whoever it is that you're talking to where we can both understand that you have certain expertise here, yeah. I have them here,
yeah,
and let's be intelligent together and connect the dots. Yes. I see all too often salespeople here when I'm coaching them. They're trying to tell people,
yes.
This is what you need to do. This
yes.
is how you do it.
Yeah.
I always try to coach the younger guys and girls here that hey, that person you're talking to is probably pretty smart.
Yeah.
They have a business that they're running.
Yeah.
You don't have to have every answer, and you don't have to tell them every
No.
answer. Like, if you can empower them to make the right decisions, they'll probably make the best decision for their company.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, like true, genuine information is so valuable. And you can only get that by letting people talk.
Right.
And asking questions. Like, negotiation tactics are like, mirroring. Like you're continually repeating what people are saying to you and asking it almost like as a question. Like, wait, so you do that? Why? And you're just wanting to get more and more information so you can serve people better or win the negotiation or make the sale or whatever it is.
And there's a lot of studies that show that people perceive a successful meeting based on how much they talk.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So it's so funny because I'm like, people are always asking about presenting, I'm like, you shouldn't have to present really. Just have a conversation. And
it's hard, man. It's that temptation to feel like the smartest guy in the room, or the temptation to make an impact. And, you don't ever leave a meeting where all you did was ask some questions and listen, feeling like, man, they're going to be impressed with me.
Right.
Cause no, you gotta have answers and you gotta have this, you gotta have that. And yeah, it's just not helpful or effective to get to what you're wanting to get at.
Yeah. Man, there's about 1,000 other things I feel like we could talk about today. I'm super impressed by you. Obviously you're a great friend of mine, but also just, hearing parts of your story that I'd never heard before, understanding just how many different roles a pastor has to have in terms of building a business. And, again, kind of now you're a GC again, building a building to shepherding people to developing staff. There's a lot of really great things that you touched on there that I think a lot of our listeners can learn from. And so we appreciate your time. The last thing that, we'll kind of touch on in this business world is really, insurance obviously plays a part in risk mitigation. Risk management is part of every business. In your experience, in building a church that's now growing and more staff and more revenue and, more exposure as you have more people, what has been your kind of experience with the insurance industry? Is there anything that you would change or complain about, or that you've been like, this has been helpful? Or
Yeah, I don't know that. I mean, I would have anything too insightful. I mean, that's part of it is that's not my role on our team to worry too much about insurance. But I think just as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, or somebody, a leader of a company or organization, so again, especially a growing one, that's the kind of thing that's like, that's the last thing I want to think about right now. I've got all these other things to think about. So just as much as possible, over communicate with clarity would be the kind of phrase I would use. Like, how do you over communicate with clarity? Meaning, there is, I know nothing about insurance. I know nothing about how this works. I need you to start at the ABCs. I need you to be super clear about what you're saying. I need you to tell me probably 7 times and probably in 7 different ways. Like I need it face to face. I need it in a presentation. I need it in an email. I need you to send me a video. I need you to tell me again, before I'm going to grasp it and really understand what you're talking about and why I need what you're selling, or why I need what you need, how you're going to provide it to me. I think I think it was Patrick Lencioni that said that, people don't hear it until you say it 7 times. And I think that's true. I found it to be true with our church, with our people. There's so much noise. You got so many places are selling you things or trying to get your business, and they're trying to get your business in IT, and they're trying to get your business in, insurance. They're trying to get your business in this product or this service or this tool or this, software or whatever it is. And we're not experts in those things. You are. And so as much as possible, like kind of what we talked about, asking, letting me ask a bunch of questions, asking me the questions I don't know to ask, and just making that as simple and as easy as possible. I think that helps build trust, and maybe even shows me the need,
Right.
Like I've got, we've got to make a decision on like retirement right now. And we've got a couple of options because we need to move from what we're doing right now to somebody else. And it feels like a rock in my shoe. It's not something I want to do. It's just something I have to do. And I want this to be as easy and simple as possible,
Right.
because I'm more focused on my mission and what I'm trying to achieve and the work that I'm trying to do. I know this is a necessary part of it, but man, how do you over communicate? Don't make me feel dumb, but know I am dumb, and be patient in providing me this, service that's necessary. And you all know this. I mean, it's also broken. There's a lot of brokenness in the insurance industry, and it's frustrating to people. And we don't know why. You know why, know, and we can't do anything about it, and you really can't do much about it.
Yeah.
And so as much as possible, making that easy.
Yeah. I think that's education is such an important part of what we do, and can be a lost part of, again, kind of alluding back to what we just talked about, teaching clients about what it is, why it's necessary, or, is often insurance purchasing. I've said this other times on this podcast. At the end of the day, it's as simple as risk mitigation. How much risk are you willing to take? Here's what that would cost, and here's what it would cost if you wanted less risk on your plate, and then you make an opportunity cost decision there.
What's been the best way in which you feel like you've educated the potential customer? Like, you said that's so key, is like teaching them, educating them. What's been the best way to do that? How have you seen that?
I think learning that, to my point earlier about developing conviction around what it is that I'm teaching, so that I can talk to a client in a plain way, understand what their business is, and then to your point, I always call it A&E, just anything and everything that they need to communicate that. So if that's, we do this with paper or emails, or this person likes to communicate via text, like whatever that thing is, making sure that you're hitting those people in the avenues that they want. Because at the end of the day, the business that you're in and the business that I am in is a people business. And no two people are the same. And they don't consume information the same way. They don't understand it the same way. Some of them are like, look, I just want you to handle it. So it's that process of trying anything and everything till you meet them on their playing field, and it's understood, and then we can make decisions from there. And again, being willing to walk away, or even sometimes telling people, hey, this is how I would handle it. If you don't want to do it that way, then that's fine, but work with that person. Because I've found that same client comes back at some other point, because they'll say, Carter was really honest about that other thing.
And I think that's, the thing that stood out was just teaching with conviction. I mean, everybody's experienced somebody trying to sell them something and they don't really believe it, or they don't really care, or I think that's huge. Just teaching with conviction. That's a big deal. Yeah. That's helpful.
Well, sweet. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate your time. We'll see you soon. Can't wait to see your building open down here, just a few blocks from our office.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Last thing then, where can people find you? I mean, where is the church? Is there a website, Instagram, your Instagram, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so we're currently meeting at the Ridgely Theater, just west of downtown Fort Worth, 9 and 11 a.m.
Cool.
And the website is theparadoxchurch.com, theparadoxchurch.com. I'm on all the socials, just my name.
Cool. How do you spell your name? The last name's tricky.
So whenever I get a room at a hotel or get a reservation at a restaurant, I just say Smith, Jim Smith. I learned that from my dad. It's Essian, so Essian.
Nice. Yeah, I won't give away this secret, but Clayton Kershaw always uses office characters from the movie.
I know you
from
told
the
me
TV
that.
show The Office.
Yes.
So I think that's a baseball thing. You got to have a fake name.
You got to have a fake name when you're going into town, man.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yep.